In this video, we're going to be talking about the different driving styles required in 2021 versus now in 2024. Therefore, we're going to talk about some of the drivers that might be struggling this year, aka a Lewis Hamilton or a Daniel Ricciardo who struggled as well. What are the differences in the cars? What are the differences in the driving styles and techniques needed to adapt to these new cars? If you're interested in the answer to this question, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. In this video, we are going to be talking about the different driving styles needed for these newer, bigger, bulkier, stiffer 2024 Formula One cars. Now, I know that I'm a little bit late to the party here, but I do still want to give it a bit of context because we're going into 2025, which is going to be more of the same. And we're moving into a new regulation set of 2026 very shortly as well. So ability to understand what you currently have is going to be required, and ability to adapt into the future is also going to be therefore required as well. So what are we talking about here? So the 2024 cars versus the 2021 cars. Well, we need to look at, say, two drivers in the same car and see what worked in 2021 and see what's not working in 2024. But we also need to pick a track and a corner type that's going to allow us to see this and demonstrate this as well. Now, for these sort of comparisons, I always come back to Hungary, not because I like Hungary or I like the track or anything like that, but because of the types of corners present at the Hungaroring. That is a lot of long corners of constant radius, one of the 7 technical corners. Now, I hear you ask me straight away, what's the technical corners? What's long corners of constant radius? Okay, let me break it down. So long corners of constant radius, think about doing a U-turn at a roundabout, for example. You sort of come in and then change direction and do a full 180. It is a long corner, so it's not a hairpin. If you think about like a big roundabout, for example, where you've got the steering on for a little while, that's a long corner of constant radius, whereas a hairpin kind of comes more to a point. Think about the Chinese hairpin, the second last corner in Shanghai International Circuit. That's the truest definition of a hairpin. And think about the final corner in Hungary, for example. That's the truest definition of a long corner of constant radius. So why do we pick long corners of constant radius? Well, you can play around with your technique in these corners and generally get away with it. So what I mean by that is you can brake early, get the rotation done early, get on throttle early, get out of the corner harder and earlier and find time that way. Or you can brake later, deeper, harder, targeting a later apex, getting the car in nice and early as well, like Lewis Hamilton likes to do, and then finding a lot of time on entry that way, but then obviously you're compromised on the exit. You can also play around with where you choose the rotation point to be. Like I say, you can do it earlier, in the middle, later. And in these types of corners, minimum speed is a thing, is important as well. Do you let the minimum speed drop out of the car and do like a V, like a short corner? Or do you take more of a U shape and keep the downforce active and keep the car sort of alive and, you know, keep aerodynamics active through the middle of the corner as well that way? So there's a lot of things that you can see in these types of corners, which we're going to dive into. Obviously, now if you ask me what the 7 technical corners are, a cheeky plug for my cheat sheet on my website. There are 7 technical corners, and the reason I have 7 technical corners laid out as such is because each corner has like a car setup or a driving technique that you need to apply inside that technical corner itself. So we've got chicanes, hairpins, double apexes, and S's being the first 4. And then we've got the 3 long corners. So long corners of constant radius, like we're going to talk about in Hungary, increasing radius, which you might find in Spain, for example, and decreasing radius, which you might find in Paul Ricard, for example, as well. So you've got the 3 long corners, and then you've got S's, chicanes, hairpins, and double apex. And this is why Suzuka is such an amazing track, because of the 7 technical corners, it's got 4 of them. It's got chicanes, the final chicane, hairpin in the middle, double apex, plenty of double apex, turn 1 and 2, Degner 1 and 2, spoon 1 and 2 as well. And S's, obviously, the famous Suzuka S's. So plenty of technical corners in Japan. That's why it's an amazing track. And Austin has a couple as well. But anyway, I digress. So we're going to focus on long corners of constant radius in this video. Now, just before we carry on a little bit further, and we do get into the telemetry later as well, I just want to characterize Lewis Hamilton's driving style, Max Verstappen's driving style, short corners and tight lines, all of which are really applicable and evident in these types of corners, long corners of constant radius. Now, Lewis is a late braker. He loves to brake late and he loves to just work everything out at the apex. He'll go like all in. He pushes all the chips all in and says, I'm going to brake late. I'm going to commit to this corner. Wherever the car ends up, I'll deal with it and I'll sort it out on the fly. That's Lewis Hamilton. That's the DNA. That's why he's so successful at Canada, for example, and also why he's been so successful at Hungary as well, because the long corners of constant radius, as we spoke about before, allows the techniques to shine as well. So that's Lewis Hamilton. I generally characterize him as a tight line driver because he does turn in earlier than anyone else on the grid. And if he can be a step inside the standard racing line, he will be a step inside. And it's all about just getting to the apex earlier and first. He wants to be first to the apex. Whatever happens after that, we'll work it out. Max is totally different. And again, they're totally different generation drivers, right? With Lewis, you'll hear stories of his father going down to the local go-kart track and putting a cone where the fastest karters were braking and saying to Lewis, this is where the fastest guys are braking. I'm going to move the cone down here and this is where you're going to brake another 1 or 2 meters after the fastest guys on the track. So that's the context for Lewis Hamilton, how he grew up and his late braking. Max is totally different generation driver, more of a sim driver, and he never commits to the corner earlier than he has to. So what Max will do in these types of corners is just start to brake and start to turn and bang, straight away he's getting information. Did I brake too early? Did I brake too late? Is there more grip than I expected? Is the front turning in? Did I lock up? Am I good? Like where am I aiming if I continued this path? He's thinking all of these things as the feedback comes to him and as the corner goes on. So it's good because then he's not committed and he can make adjustments. Like if he went in too deep, he can just squeeze the brakes on a little bit more and start to turn a little bit more and try to save the corner that way. Or if he broke too early, well, it's an easy fix as well. He can just come out of the brakes or go on the brakes slower and don't turn in as much. Just keep the wheel straighter and do it all a little bit later. And he can save the corner that way as well. But the beautiful thing about that style is that you're not committed, which means you can make these micro adjustments on the fly and always end up with the perfect corner. And as the car changes, like the tires wear and the fuel comes down or the track rubbers in and everything, he's more receptive to what's happening and all of the constant change during a race as well. So he's always never committing into the corner. Whereas with Lewis, if it kind of goes wrong, it goes badly wrong. It's difficult to be consistent that way. But from a tire wear point of view, you would think that Max's technique would give him an easier time on the tires. I have a 21-page paper on my website explaining why it might not be as you think with regards to tire wear. But anyway, I just thought I'd give you that as a bit of context as well, how Lewis likes to go all in and work it out with the steering wheel, and Max likes to just wait and see, like, where am I going and is it working out and do I need to make adjustments and what's happening, because he's getting feedback in a long corner of constant radius. You've got plenty of time to do that sort of thing. So again, the long corner of constant radius showing the difference in techniques as well. Okay, so enough blabbering. Let's jump over to the telemetry. And the first thing I want to do is work out what worked in 2021. What was the correct approach for those cars? Now, keep in mind, those cars were lower, lighter, the tire profile was smaller, less vertical oscillation, less floor like ground effect aerodynamics happening, more from the rear wings and so on. So totally different era of car. Anyway, let's jump over to the telemetry and have a look. All right, so hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. We've got qualifying in 2021 Hungary, Hamilton versus Bottas. So we picked the two fastest laps, Hamilton on the 15.4 and Bottas on the 15.7. So Hamilton got pole there by a couple of tenths. So if you have a look at the track dominance map, anywhere where it's aqua is in Lewis Hamilton's favor. As you come down the start-finish line, what do you notice straight away? It just turns aqua. So what does that mean? Well, Lewis is finding time straight away under braking on entry, but it turns white on the exit out of turn one. So Bottas is finding some time on the way back. Similar sort of thing is happening into turn two, right? And into turn four. It just turns aqua in favor of Lewis. So if we don't even look at a single trace, we can see that Hamilton's finding time under braking and on entry as a Lewis Hamilton does, right? So that's exactly the sort of thing that seems to be working. So if you look at the braking into turn one, for example, you've got the aqua colored Lewis Hamilton braking later than the white colored Valtteri Bottas. So generally speaking, when you brake later, you're going to be braking harder because you have to stop the car quicker and in a shorter distance. And when you're braking earlier, you can afford to brake softer and cover more distance, but the car's platform is a little more stable. So because these cars weren't prone to that issue of upsetting their balance, then Lewis can brake late and hard and get the car in. You see the delta spiking straight away in Lewis Hamilton's favor. And, all is good in the world of Lewis Hamilton. You can look at the last three corners, which are typical constant radius corners as well. And again, you can see the aqua brake trace happening later than the white one. Here, they're fairly equal, even a little bit later for Lewis. Again, really late into the final corner as well. And all the while, the delta is creeping up here in these corners in Lewis Hamilton's favor, the late braking favor. If we just have a look at the track map, the corners we're really interested in are turn 2, which is long corner of constant radius. See, it makes like that U shape. Turn 4, this right-hander here, and the second last and last corners as well. So I thought I'd show you this to highlight that Lewis was quick in 21. The Mercedes was suiting his style. He could do Lewis Hamilton things and brake late and hard into corners and find lap time, as you can see here in front of us. So let's circle back a few steps and then say, okay, so if that was 2021, who did a decent job in 2021 and 2024, and that we can use as an example potentially and get some more information on how to drive the 2024 cars. So if we jump to 2021 Hungary qualifying, like exactly where we were, but we grab Lando Norris, who qualified 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in 2021, which was a good effort given where Mr. Ricciardo was a little bit further back outside the top 10. So if we grab Lando's 2021 lap, his fastest lap, the 16.3 that you see here, and then we go to 2024 Hungary, again, totally different car. This is where we're going to start to see the differences. And we grab the pole sitter, Lando Norris, and we grab his 15.2, and we put them side by side next to each other. We can see now what the differences in good looks like. If we're assuming Lando's driving the car nicely in 2021 and 2024 and didn't change teams and so on. So we have a look at the delta. So the 2024 lap is the quicker lap. And what I'm suspecting you're going to find here is that you need to brake a little bit earlier, and the late braking sort of stuff that we saw before with Hamilton doesn't work. So here's where the damage is being done. Delta starts creeping up in the last couple of corners. Last couple of corners, again, guys, this is the long corners of constant radius. So they're the key corners that we spoke about before. If we zoom in here and have a look at the braking, remember the white is the 15.2. That's this year's pole lap, the quick one. The 2021, the 16.3 was how Lando was driving in 2021, which we said was fine. But what's happening here is you can see white braking earlier than orange. And that's what Lando's doing across the years, is braking a lot earlier than he would have ordinarily broken in 2021. So he's braking earlier here, he's braking earlier here, he's braking earlier here. So that's the last 3 braking zones, guys. So that's here, here, and here. And all the while he's finding time by doing so. So you might be wondering like, well, how is that possible? He's braking earlier. Well, we'll get onto that in a minute. But I wanted to use this section of the video to highlight to you that braking earlier, and you can see in the speed trace, braking earlier, getting the rotation done earlier, getting on throttle earlier and harder as well, seems to be the way to go here. Now, crucially, in the final corner, he's also able to keep the minimum speeds high as well. You can see this white minimum speed of 147 is greater than the orange minimum speed of 138. That's nearly 10 Ks, right? And that's worth a lot of downforce as well in the middle of that corner, which these cars like. So a good job by Lando, and an example of what you should be doing in 2024 if you want to extract the most out of the car. Now, if you don't believe me, we can also confirm this just quickly with Max Verstappen as well. We can get rid of Lando, grab Verstappen, who 2024 came P3. Obviously, that's the best he could do, the 15.2. Go back to 2021, obviously his world championship year, and grab Max Verstappen there, who was P3 again. So he's obviously doing the best he can with the car that he has at that point in time. Now, the quickest one is the light blue, the 15.2. That's this year's. And then in 2021, he was doing the 15.6. So if we go to the exact same corners, we're expecting that the light blue this year is braking earlier than the dark blue, which is the 2021. And exactly. So this is what Max has actually moved with the times here. And that's a sign of a good driver, someone that understands the car and what needs to be done to drive that car quick. So Max is braking earlier here, here, and here, the final three corners. Again, similar to what we saw Lando getting the rotation done earlier, getting on throttle earlier, getting everything done earlier. So he's got a great understanding of how to drive these cars. And crucially here, again, we see in the last corner, the minimum speed 148 versus 142. So 6K's more worth of minimum speed as well. So just to reiterate, what Lando and Max are doing and have moved on and have done is that they've completely changed their style in these long corners of constant radius. So now what we need to do is check that is the technique of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris being used and applied by Lewis Hamilton as well? Has he transitioned to the 2024 cars the same way these two young boys have? Now, 2021 we have in white, that's his 15.4, that's the pole lap. And then in aqua, we've got the 2024. So we're expecting to see that the aqua is braking earlier. That's what needs to be done, right? Now, if we go to the final three corners again and have a look at the aqua braking, that's not what we see, guys. We don't see the same thing happening. We see Lewis braking identical here into the third last corner. Into the second last corner, Lewis is braking later this year. So the aqua is braking later this year than what he was doing in 2021. Remember, the aqua is the 2024 and the white is the 2021. So he's braking later this year and then equal again into the final corner. So this is a totally different picture to what we were seeing with Verstappen and Lando. And I suspect that this is what's causing the dramas for Lewis Hamilton. Check this out. You see where he broke late into the second last corner? Look at the minimum speed that fell out of the car into that corner as well. That's not a good sign. That means that he lost 100 versus 110. He lost 10 kilometers in the middle of that corner. I'm comparing year on year, but still the other boys were able to keep the minimum speeds higher into the last corner, for example. So Lewis has let the downforce and speed drop out of the car by braking later and having to sort everything out with these cars. And therein lies, guys. That's the proof in the pudding. I think he's not moved with the times. He's not understood the cars, or the cars don't suit his driving style. And he's not willing to change or not able to change, I guess, are the possibilities for what's happening there with Lewis. So what are the conclusions then based on the quick analysis? Well, we saw 2021, the late hard braking was working well for Lewis. He wasn't having a problem in any of those corners. We saw that the transition from 21 to 24 across Lando Norris and Max, who'd been doing good jobs in Hungary in both years, had completely changed their style and started braking earlier, probably gentler as well, and keeping the car's platform more stable. But Lewis hasn't moved on. He hasn't made that change. And that's a problem. Like, we've seen drivers struggle, like Sebastian Vettel, for example, who had great eras where the cars suited him, but not been able to adapt to the new way of car and not change their driving style. And again, like we say, guys, they're going to have to do that and continue to do that in 2025. They're going to have to do that again when the 2026 regs come. So now let's finally conclude and answer the question, well, why is this the way you should be driving these cars in long corners of constant radius and probably generally throughout the calendar as well? Well, as we said before, they're heavier. So when you brake late and hard with a heavy car, there's more weight that gets transferred across to the front tires. So that's the first thing. I mean, more weight is more weight transfer. And that's not a good thing when it's late and hard. Like, that's going to upset the car. That's going to like put the car into a pitch. That's going to load the front too much and unload the rear too much as well. It's going to give you all sorts of dramas and instability on entry. It's going to be a lot better if you can just brake softer and more progressively and stop that pitch from happening, because there's more weight, right? So you've got to be more careful with that brake pedal. You've got more vertical oscillation with these cars. Remember, they're heavier. The tires are bigger as well, and they're stiffer a little bit as well. So you don't want that, like we discussed with that pitch, like they can't deal with that weight transfer from a vertical sense as well. Remember, we had the porpoising issues as well. So the cars start jumping and bouncing a little bit. putting a heavy brake or a hard initial braking input or late braking into the car is not what it wants. Obviously, it's jumping around a bit, so you just want to settle that car, and by braking gently, you look after the car's platform that way. Remember, they make downforce in a different way as well. So we've gone from, you know, all the side pod stuff, the skirting boards and barge board era, to now we're into the ground effect cars. They're generating downforce from the floor, as opposed to, well, they're still generating downforce from the wings, but predominantly from the floor, as opposed to predominantly from the wings, which was what was happening in 2021. So again, the cars need that minimum speed in the car to help keep that downforce active and alive. When you brake hard and late and you upset the balance and the minimum speed falls out of the car, well, it's game over at that point. Like you've lost the grip, you've lost the corner. It's hard to get on traction now, and it's just dramas from that point on. So you lose on the entry due to the instability, and now you lose on the exit as well. So what the Maxes and Landos are doing are just braking gentle, soft, turning in nicely, seeing what happens, and just keeping the car's aerodynamic platform stable such that the air can just continue beautifully and in a laminar way. When you put the hard braking application in, well, now the platform is all over the place and you've unsettled the car a little bit. So not only from a mechanical point of view are you getting too much weight transfer, it's lifting the back and loading the front and jumping around and vertical oscillation from a mechanical point of view. Now from an aerodynamic platform point of view, well, you haven't done the car any favors either. So I thought I'd give you that as a little bit further context as to why, but I think it's got to do with the weight, the tire stiffness, the way the cars generate aerodynamics as well. So I hope that video helped you guys. If you have a question, thought, definitely leave it in the comments section for me as well. I look forward to reading and answering your questions there. Definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and give the video a thumbs up. That would be great. All of those things help the channel and boost it moving forward into the future. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.